Five Black police officers in Memphis, Tennessee are charged with the brutal beating and death of Tyree Nichols. Was it due to racism or single motherhood? You won't believe what happened when vegan protesters tried to stop a truck of live cattle. NBA player Stephen Curry is blocking on and off the court. Do you tip in the drive through? We'll discuss how tipping has reached the tipping point. Lala Anthony had harsh comments about marriage, but we're going to dig a little deeper and break down what's really going on with relationships. All that and more next. Enemy territory here. Hello, it's Wednesday and it's time for Pop and Politics. We are talking about the latest in hot topics, news, and entertainment. I'm KJ, and let me introduce you to my co-host. Tonight we have Shelly E. T.
Hey, y'all.
Yes.
Yes.
We also have Kendra. Kendra is joining tonight. She is a former pageant queen and now pageant director. So happy to have you guys back tonight. How's everyone doing? All right. Again, today, this is the first Wednesday, the first day of February. As you guys know, we celebrate Black History Month. It's also the Love Month with Valentine's Day. So we're going to kind of touch on all of that throughout the broadcast. So again, join the conversation by leaving a comment on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You check us out at Pop and Politics. That's the channel we have now on YouTube. So you go to Pop and Politics on YouTube. We will check the comments periodically throughout the show. We're also on Facebook. You can check us out there and subscribe. This is a new channel, the Pop and Politics channel. So we certainly need your subscriptions. That makes our voice that much stronger. Also, you always know when we post new content. And if you like independent media and want to support what we do, donate. Any amount is appreciated. You can also check us out on our website at www.metroconservativemedia.com. Again, for up-to-date information, we are a necessary voice in news and entertainment. All right, ladies, let's set it off. So we are talking and starting out tonight with, again, the brutal body camera video that was released on Friday that has rocked the nation. Again, I'm sure everybody knows Tyree Nichols. He was beaten, pepper sprayed, and tasered by multiple cops during a traffic stop in Memphis, Tennessee, earlier this month. All five police officers that did this, or allegedly did this, or shown in the video doing this, are facing second-degree murder charges for this heinous act. So this has kind of been talked about all over the news, but tonight I want to talk specifically about the what media and news pundits are all saying what caused these five police officers, Black police officers, to do this. I want to start off with Van Jones. He put a opinion piece on CNN, headlined, "The police who killed Tyree Nichols were Black, but they might still have been driven by racism." So he says in this article, one of the sad facts about anti-Black racism is that Black people ourselves are not immune to its pernicious effects. Society's message that Black people are inferior, unworthy, dangerous is pervasive. Over many decades, numerous experiments have shown that these ideas can infiltrate Black minds as well as white. Self-hatred is a real thing, end quote. So that's what Van Jones said. So you know what, tonight I want to start off with you, Kendra. Do you believe the brutal beating of Tyree Nichols stemmed from the black police officers' self hatred?
I think that for anybody to do what those officers did to that man, there has to be a level of self hatred that they have within themselves because they didn't exhibit any level of humanity and decency there. So I definitely think that for what they did, and how they did it, I think that you have to have hate in your heart, to
Now,
do
is that
something.
the same thing as what Van Jones was saying as
I
far as
don't think that
mm,
it's very hard for me to subscribe that black people are racist against other black people. I think that there definitely had to be something going on within those men's head and heart to do what they did to him.
mm,
And I think that is um, what we should be focusing on because they were just wrong.
okay? So
And
you think it's just evil hatred people?
Yeah, there had whether I don't know if color has to be a part of the level
Okay.
of evil and hatred for them to just have been evil and have hatred in their heart to treat anybody like
Hmm.
that is wrong. And I think the part that is hard for us is oftentimes we don't see ourselves represented in certain spaces. So when for me, especially here in the South, when you see a black police officer, you it's almost like you do the we don't know each other, but it's what's understood doesn't need to be explained.
I
And I'm sure, obviously I don't know Tyree Nichols, but I'm sure when you getting pulled over and you see that the cop, looks like you, sometimes you're able to give like a breath because it's like, oh well, I know, you know what, even if I'm finna get a ticket, I'm gonna get to go home. And now, even with what they did, we can't even have that small inkling of like, oh, they look like me, so give me my ticket, tell me what I did wrong, and let me go on my way. And they just kind of they took that away, so now it's like, well,
So I want to
anybody.
go. I want to go to you because you brought up an interesting point. I want to move to you, Shelley, because Kendra is saying that generally, because they were black officers, I'm getting. She felt that this was an added sting because generally, when she sees black officers, there's a kindred spirit there, and she feels like she's a little bit more comfortable when the officer is black. So, in the same way, I want to ask you something, and I'm going to be, direct. This is just a direct question because Memphis has one of the highest crime rates in the country. It's a predominantly black city, similar to Baltimore, where we are here. Um, and so, basically, the direct question is: do you think black people are dangerous?
So let me answer your question. I want to say what Kendra said first. I'm going to answer your question, KJ. What Kendra described sounds to me similar to black people looking at other black people and they just automatically assuming a hookup. Like, when I know you work at KFC and you look like me, so I'm gonna get the hookup from you. That's what Kendra is really describing. So black people assume that black people are gonna give them the hookup just because we look alike. That's number one. Number two, I think that's ludicrous. Number two,
That's why
by and large, I do think that black people, we are exhibiting the most dangerous culture, violent culture today. I'm saying culture, and I'm going to be specific just to say culture. That is the culture that we are exporting to the world. We commit most of the crimes, the violent crimes. We do commit them against ourselves or our own community, but we are some of the most violent. I'll say one of the most violent cultures today. I say that to my utter shame, my utter heartbreak, because look at me. I'm a black woman. Okay. I don't run from being a black woman. I don't put on white face and pretend that I'm another culture or ethnicity. But we do exhibit some of the most violent tendencies today. And I call it the laughing stock, because not only are we have some of the most violent cultural tendencies, we also are used and looked at as the most entertaining. Right. So it's almost like we're gladiatorial. We're the gladiators in the circus ring for the world to mock and laugh at and to enjoy us for the violence that we perpetrate. So yeah, I do think in some ways we do have one of the most violent cultures.
All right. Well, I
I
want
just
to
want to
ask you.
say. I just want to say that I wasn't saying that in regards to having seeing the black officers and being there's a hookup. I think for me and living in a predominantly white space, my perception is very different than y'all's because y'all live in a very much predominantly African American space or black space. So it's not necessarily a I owe you my sister. It's not that. Here in the South, it's just a respect thing. It's like, when if I get pulled over, I got pulled over and, the officer was black and, he gave me a ticket, whatever the case may be. He pulled me over because he said my tail light was out. Okay, it's 9:00 at night and I'm on a back dark road. I wait and pull over underneath a light and then I pull off and he puts the lights on again. So when he put them on again, he said, "Oh, your tail light's not out now." And me being me, because it was like, okay, well, thank you for letting me know that, but I'm gonna tell your mama because like you done stressed me out by pulling me over 2 times and a half a mile. I'm not expecting you to do me any favors or any solids, but if you, it's a relatability thing,
Yeah, I think what and I kind of got what Shelly was saying. I don't think she was saying in this situation it's about a hookup, but it's just something that just the same thing with black owned businesses. People who have black owned businesses, because they're black, I'm black. Some people feel like, oh, they're going to give me, we connect on that level, so they're going to, provide me some type of special treatment.
No, I don't think it's necessarily about special treatment. It's just that when you live in the South, and especially with racism, like I don't expect you to do me any solids or any favors. But living in a space where white people,
you said you feel
it's not a situation. And like I said, I can only speak here, growing up and living in a predominantly white space, and living and growing up in an area where racism was very much prevalent.
When the officer pulls me over, bottom line, when the officer pulls me over, I don't care what they look like. I'm saying, oh damn. I don't care what they look like.
I've had pleasant experiences. I don't know. I don't know. It's all damn anyway, but I don't know. I've had pleasant experiences from all kind of officers. Maybe it's because I'm a black woman and I don't really do anything to I'm not alarmed like that. But I've had pleasant experiences. Most officers that actually, it was the black officer who actually gave me a little trouble. A black man who actually gave me a little trouble because he was in his, I don't know, short man complex. I don't know what he had going on, but I've had pleasant experiences from officers. However, in this case, I mean, I don't think that we should be looking at it as a black and white issue. It's the fact that officers they're doing too much. They're killing people for no reason, basically. Mm-hmm. So I don't think we should be looking at this as a race issue, but as a training issue or whatever the complex is with these officers that they feel like they can do these things to these people. Like that's what we should be looking at. Van Jones, he's not even a credible source for me for anything because he's always going to put things on black. Now there's black people that have killed another black man. Now they're trying to shift the narrative to make it okay for some reason. And I'm like, it's not okay because the officers, period, need more training and better training.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys all believe that it was an abuse of power. So basically, as you know, in this instance, the police abused their power. It really didn't have anything to do with race, but it was an abuse of power. So I want to move on to this clip because, again, we also have the narrative that it was due to single motherhood. So take a look at this clip, and then I want to get you guys' response.
Don't want us focused on reality. Hey, if they want us to devote an hour of coverage to this and weekend coverage of this, and they want to take us to a good place, I would examine the racial element of this because there is a racial element. And this is a story about young black men and their inability to treat each other in a humane way. Everybody involved in this on the street level was either 24 to 32 years old. Everybody. It was a group of young black men, 5-on-1. Looked like gang violence to me. It looked like what young black men do when they're supervised by a single black woman. And that's what they got going on in the Memphis Police Department. They've elected some or put some black woman in charge of the police force. And we're getting the same kind of chaos and disunity and violence that we see in a lot of these cities that are run by single mothers. If we want to discuss the breakdown of family that leads to disrespect for authority, that causes you to resist the police and run from the police and not comply with the police because you resist authority at all time, because there was no male authority in your home, let's have that discussion. But that's not where they want to take us. They want to take us down the path of saying, you know what, this is Tucker Carlson's fault. This is some random this is Donald Trump's fault. It's not. It's the breakdown of family and the buying in to all these left-wing things that have nothing to do with promoting family.
All right. So that's another take on the incident that is due to single motherhood. And we know that, as he mentioned, the police chief there, she was newly appointed there, is a woman. She actually put together this unit where these 5 officers were a part of, the Scorpion unit, to combat violent crime in Memphis. And actually, they had been doing a pretty good job based on the numbers. But want to get your thoughts on that, Shelley. Does that have any, is this really about single motherhood?
I heard that clip and I watched his monologue and everything with Jason Whitlock. And I even commented on some of on this page. One of the comments that I made early on about this when it first happened was that this race, it's about race, but it's not the way the media is playing it out. So in this sense, I agree with Jason Whitlock. It's the culture. That's why I started off when you asked me the first comment I made was about a culture. When I watched that video, it did look like a gang beating to me. It looked personal. It didn't look anything to do with professional. I even said this has nothing to do with training. This has everything to do with street, if you will. So in that sense, I agree with Jason Whitlock that it's a culture. It's a culture. This is the culture that I think, again, at this time in history, that by and large, this is what Black people, this is what we're putting out. I understand, but I don't see how he automatically singled out the single mothers. Although, again, I think I understand his point about the culture, things that are coming out of a culture when you have generations being raised in only a one-parent household, that these are the cultural breakdowns that we will see and that we are actually experiencing.
Mm-hmm. What about you, T? I'm gonna get your response. Was he way out left with this idea that this was due to the single mother culture?
I won't say way out left field, because I understood where he was coming from. When you are raised by a single mother, single Black mother, or single mother, you don't respect authority. And sometimes in this case, well, not in this case, but sometimes when, I guess, the officer would be authority, and when you're raised by a Black woman, Black mother, you haven't had that experience of what authority looks like as a Black man. But in this case, I don't think that it had anything to do with that. So I won't say he was totally left field, because in general, that is an issue. But in this case, because the police chief was a Black single woman, I don't know if that is relatable, a reason here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Get your thoughts, Kendra. I want to get your thoughts, Kendra, because we have here two kind of combating things. So we have one, we have a lot of the left-leaning mainstream media pushing this idea that these officers acted like this in part due to racism, due to white supremacy. And then you have Jason Whitlock, who's generally on the right, saying it's due to single motherhood. Both of these kind of causes are way, it's really out there with, as far as when you think about it, because all the officers are Black, and single motherhood, what does that have to do with what happened here? So what are your thoughts there as far as those two dynamics, and they're both so out of the norm as far as what we would think this was
I think that it's sad that I felt like the way I took his comment as far as seeing the police being ran by a woman, it made it seem like women are incapable of leading men professionally. So for me, I was like, well, obviously, I don't necessarily subscribe to that. I think that women are able to lead. I think that unless we know the breakdown of each officer that was a part of this, to know that if they was raised by a single mother, then we statistically don't have that information to draw that conclusion.
Let me jump in there for you. I just had a question for you, Kendra. When you say women are able to lead, do you think that it's ideal for them to lead, or do you think they lead just as well as men, or do you think in general men would be?
I think that it's women. I think it's a competency thing. I think that women to say that women don't have the ability to lead is almost like saying, you know, that we don't think that we should have a woman president, or women can't ascend and be and pursue whatever career field they want. And I think that's a slap in the face to women who do the work to advance themselves in a career. Now, as far as it come into family, I think that a mother obviously has a role, but a father has a role too. I believe, as someone who's grown up in a 2-parent household, I believe, you know, that a father is needed in the household, but that ain't this. We talking about a profession. You can't.
Before you go on, I want to get Shelly in. I want you to respond to what Kendra said, if you could, about the idea of women being unable to lead a police force. Do you feel that same way, or do you agree with Kendra?
I think when Jason Whitlock made that comment, I think it is kind of demeaning and condescending, or it's at the very least, it's very tricky. There are women and men in every profession, and so to say that a woman is not competent, I agree with Kendra. I think it is very condescending. However, there are some professions that tend to be more masculine or more heavily men. But again, this woman, Miss Davis, Officer Davis, she apparently, at least on record, she has earned the role and the right to be in the position that she's in. So just because she is over top of more men, does that mean that she shouldn't take the job? I find that a little argument.
T, what is your thoughts on this?
Yes, I mean, women can barely lead a household. How is she going to lead a whole police force? Because, I mean, in some ways, the guy Whitlock, he was right, because, I mean, if she's a woman leading like Shelly said, this is a pretty much male-dominated industry, they're going to be, I don't know, you know, what her leading style is, but I don't think they're going to be full competency in leading a whole police force. Because I mean, she earned the right to be there. She earned the right to be there, but this is what feminism has done. Feminism wants women to have equal rights as men, and then when they come get into positions and criticize, they want to cry and go back home and cry and shit. But it shouldn't be. Don't be there in the first place. If you can't handle the criticism, if you can't handle being or leading in the position that you have, then don't be there.
But what about someone like Margaret Thatcher? So she's been, you know, gone down in history as one of the best prime ministers of the UK. She was tough, she was smart, and she led the UK out of a really tough time. What about someone like her? What about someone like Condoleezza Rice, who's, you know, also Secretary of State? Which in that role is a leading role, you know, maybe not the president, but it is a leading role of the
What came of it? What came of all of these women in these positions? What came of it? Did anything good? Are we still talking about, other than the fact that she was a woman and she had that role? Are we talking about any of the effects that came from when she had this role?
She's an icon in history. Movies.
What came of it? What came of her being in that position?
What was supposed to have come of it? She carried out the duties of the position. She represented the UK, certainly. We have Condoleezza Rice representing the United States as National Security Director. Also, she was the president, the vice president, the provost of a major university. So not only is she competent professionally, she is a professional musician. That's just one or two women. But to say that there's a difference between being a leader in the home and a leader in your profession. And I think a lot of people draw those lines to women and say that women can't lead at all.
What's the difference?
There is a difference. Even biblically, there's a difference. There's a difference. Even biblically, there is one. To say that women can't lead at all, that is not biblical. That's not. In the home is one thing. In the profession, when you earn the competency, yes, you can. Not only that, every woman is not going to be married who's in the workplace. So there are some single women, and I'm not, whether they're single or not, I'm just saying every woman is not married. So there are some single women who can ascertain and earn the credentials and the competency to lead whatever the department is or organization. I'm not saying that it's for me or you or whatever, but that doesn't mean that she's not qualified on paper, at least. I'm saying on paper because I don't know her record, professionally. I'm just saying it doesn't mean that she has not earned the merit to be there. We talk about a merit-based society. Well, then there are some women who do meet the mark, professionally at least.
Let me get T's response there.
I asked a question and didn't get an answer. I said, what's the difference between a woman leading a household and her leading in her profession?
Because in her household, she is, I guess, subject to her husband. Her husband is the leader of the house. In her workplace, the husband has nothing to do with her workplace at where she's competent and has earned the right to be there. Two different things.
Different format. To me, it's comparable. Like for me personally, I would never be under a woman pastor because there are. I mean, you want to bring up the Bible, and yeah, I mean, if you want to bring up the Bible, it says women should be silent in the church or whatever.
But I didn't say the church. I said in the professional, in the workplace.
You brought up the
Bible. And the home are different places. I said in the workplace.
And like I said, for me personally, I will never be under a woman pastor because there are things that women, and I'm not saying that they're incompetent, but I'm saying that their leadership skills and their leadership ways don't align with what I believe in.
So so are you the same way on your jobs? I mean, you won't work underneath a woman or a female manager?
It depends on the job. If it's a job or a company that is more female dominated, yes, or feminine dominated, then yes. If it's a cop, no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't work up on a cop, a woman who's a head of a police chief or whatever. The police chief. I wouldn't work it up on there. I mean, I wouldn't go to a woman pastor. I mean, call me misogynist, whatever you want, but that's just how I feel.
Well, how would you
say that again?
With your line of thinking, you shouldn't even be a cop.
Yeah.
No more
military, nothing. No, yeah. I mean,
go ahead.
I just want to say biblically that there were women in the Bible that led. There were queens in the Bible. So to say that women don't have the capacity, we just look biblically, there were women that got put in position that were able to lead. So to say that, I don't necessarily agree with that. I also think that, for someone like myself who is almost 35 years old, who's not married, who does not have children, to say that I cannot ascend to a certain level of professionalism to lead men is very much condescending as well, because what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just stay at this low pay grade and not ascend for myself, or do I have to marry someone else and hope that and he make all the money? Because in your line of thinking is I'm just supposed to sit and lay dormant and wait for some man to come and take me away and whisk me off. And I don't necessarily ascribe to that, because I think that the Bible, if we want to talk biblically, the Bible says work while you wait. So I'm not going to work and cap my ability, my God-given abilities to be who God created me to be while I'm waiting on him to get here. I'm going to continue to ascend and continue to build, and the person that is created and destined and designed for me will meet me exactly where I am. And I just think that, the way that your perspective is kind of a little bit small-minded, because it's almost as if I'm just supposed to stay a customer service representative and tip-tap here. But no, I can't get a master's degree. I can't do anything, because if there are men and they're in most fields, they're men dominated. And most fields are men dominated. Especially when you start getting to the higher ups, it's majority men. So to say that I cannot do or be because I have to wait on a man to do it, I think you're selling yourself. Anybody that thinks like that, you're selling yourself short.
Well, most women that say and talk the way you're saying right now can't get a man, and that's the reason that they feel like they have to wait on a man to. I mean, you don't have to wait on a man. A man will find you. I mean,
Right.
that's easy. That's easy if you can get one.
Well, we want to move on. Shelly, final thoughts, because we were going to touch on that a little bit later.
One of the things, talking about this Tyree Nichols, this whole thing, one of the things that I disagreed with Jason Whitlock when I saw these officers beating him, and I asked him on his site, well, if women are always to blame for what men do because they were raised by single women, at what point do grown men take accountability and responsibility for their own actions? Because don't we, at least on this show, on the conservative side, don't we tout that personal responsibility and accountability? So if the woman or their moms are always blamed, no matter how old they are, at what point do they have to take responsibility and accountability for their own actions?
All right, good point. We will end on that with this topic and move along to something a little lighter here. Take a look at this video.
Standing here in front of Fearman Slaughterhouse, where 10,000 lives are taken daily, 10,000 innocent lives slaughtered here for no more than the taste buds of humans. Here we have the truck approaching, where approximately 300 animals are stacked into this truck. We're gonna stop this truck so we can bear witness. Oh, I almost got run over. Fucking lunatic. Want to stop. These drivers have no fucking respect for life, no respect for human life, no respect for animal life. Psychopath.
So, those were vegan protesters out there trying to stop a truck that was carrying livestock. And I want to start off with you, Shelly. You saw at the end, he said the man was a lunatic. Who's a lunatic in this video?
First of all, they trying to stop the meat truck. They were about to be roadkill. Okay, that's number one. Number two, did you see his belt? He came out of his belt. His belt loop was hanging off in the back. He's trying to stop a big old 18 whatever wheel or Mack truck. They are lunatics. They are lunatics. That driver had a place to go. That driver wanted to drop off his load and get his money and get home to his family. He was not thinking about these lunatics out here. That he just wasn't doing it. He wants to go feed his family, get home, get out the damn road.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, T? They have protesters. We do encourage protest in this United States, but did they go too far?
They're worried about the wrong things. Yeah, they went too far. Like, they put their lives in danger for some animals that will never ever know them and don't care about their lives. Like, it was doing too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are your thoughts on this, Kendra? We see this kind of stuff on the left a lot with these vegan protesters, the tree huggers, putting themselves in harm's way to make a point. Is that something that you think was valid?
I mean, if you wanted to die, you could have it was so much easier ways that they could have took their lives on out of here. You didn't have to be wasting them people time like that, because if you don't want to eat meat, don't eat it, But as far as for me in my house, I'm going to eat my steak, and that's just how I feel about it.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, want to move on to Stephen Curry. So again, we're going through these headlines. Again, we're going to talk about Lala Anthony and the comments she made about marriage in a couple of minutes or moments. But I want to get to Stephen Curry. So NBA superstar Stephen Curry, who publicly endorsed Joe Biden for president in 2020, is opposing a low-income housing development near his $30 million mansion, according to a local news report. He says, we hesitate to add to the not in our backyard rhetoric, but we wanted to send a note before today's meeting. Safety and privacy for us and our kids continue to be our top priority and one of the biggest reasons we chose Atherton as home. So Steph and his wife, Aisha Curry, wrote in a letter to officials in Atherton. This is like a really mega affluent community. So if the plan moves forward, the Currys want the town to build considerably taller fencing and landscaping to block sight lines onto our family's property. That's what he said. So I want to get your thoughts on this, Shelley. Where's the Democrat outrage over this? This is their thing. They hate gentrification. They hate people putting up walls and fences to keep other people out. What's going on here?
Steph Curry is representing their outrage. The outrage is not in my backyard. The NAMB, it is that not in my backyard. He does not want these low living, whatever, reckless people near his property. And then he has the audacity, no humility at all, to say that the city should put up a fence on his property and he has millions of dollars. Why don't you go ahead and fence off your own property? But this is the kicker. These are the same types of people who will come in and blast people in the city or wherever to say, no, we don't want low income people in our little working income class community because they're going to run down our property values. We don't have all this land to put up fences, but we know that they're going to bring with them certain cultural values and behaviors that is just not good for our little community. People like us that would say that, oh, we would be called all kinds of racists and bigots, and we don't care about the little man and all this stuff. They are full of shit.
All right. I want to get your thoughts on this, Kendra. Do you feel the same way? I mean, are they being hypocritical? We do see this on the left and the Democrats a lot where they try to say, the whole thing with the border and the wall. We were saying we want to protect our border, protect those areas, those border towns there that are being overrun with illegal immigrants. Put the wall up, put up some type of construction to keep these people out. Steph Curry is a Democrat. He's putting up a wall to keep low-income housing out. What are your thoughts?
I think that if he wants the wall, he should pay for it himself. I don't think that should be on the back of the city to pay for it. And in a space where homelessness is running rampant, you would think that he would be supporting making sure that everyone has a roof over their head. And like he makes millions of dollars, so I'm pretty sure he can afford some wood for a fence. I just think that for him, I can understand him voicing his concern. On one hand, I understand his level of celebrity. Living amongst anybody there's a risk. I mean, in that, but it's on him to protect him and his family. It's not on the state or the county to do that.
What's your thoughts on that, T? Do you think it's about his celebrity or is it about him being rich?
It's about one of these comedians said something when N-words get money, they don't want to live nowhere near the N-words. So this is quite familiar. We've seen this when it comes to immigration and building a wall and all that. Trump wanted the citizens to build a wall, to pay for the wall. And now Stephen Curry wants the city to pay for a wall. Like it's only convenient when it favors them.
Yeah. Well, I want to move on to our major topic of the night, which are the comments that Lala Anthony made about marriage. Who, for those of you who may not know, Lala Anthony is the ex-wife of Carmelo Anthony. He's a basketball player for the NBA, or retired basketball player for the NBA. She's been on the scene for a while. She was a huge television correspondent in the 90s. Now she's gone into acting. She's currently on Star's BMF drama. Take a look at her comments she said on the popular talk show Breakfast Club.
I was talking about, I feel like currently marriage is not a goal for people. I don't hear people who aren't married saying like, I want to get married. You just start hearing it less and less. Like before that was a goal, like before social media and just the way people interact now. I'm not in conversations with people who are talking about like, I can't wait to meet someone and get married. Now people say, yeah, I want to meet somebody, be in a relationship, have this bond, but I don't need the marriage piece to feel like it's successful. And most, I'm not saying all, be careful with my words, most married people that I know are miserable and not happy and don't want to be married. They would prefer to be single. And what's happening is people look at the stats and they say, oh, well, divorce rates are going down. But the issue is less people are getting married. People don't want to get married.
So I want to talk about that. So she was right. Based on the data, there are less people getting married. That has fallen somewhat. I mean, it's been stable, relatively stable. But in recent years, it is down, I believe, about 8 percentage points since 1990, according to the Department of Labor and Statistics. Or I'm sorry, the U.S. Census Bureau. But what I want to talk about is this just relative to her living in L.A., the celebrity life? And I want to start off with UT. I mean, is this something that the real world people like us are experiencing and believe and agree with? Or is this something just in her celebrity Hollywood circle?
No, it's definitely something that real people who aren't celebrities are dealing with. I'm actually surprised that celebrities are it's trickled down or up or whatever to celebrity. But regular people the gender wars, I'm so tired of hearing it, especially on social media. These gender wars are going back and forth. Men are like, oh, we don't want to get married because the women are going to take all of our money at the end of the day. And the women are like, Kendra said earlier, oh, I'm making all this money. I don't need a dude for nothing. So she didn't say that, but this is what women are saying. I don't need a man for anything because I got everything I need, so I don't need a woman. So people aren't getting together. They aren't marrying because we've lost in society. We've lost the concept of marriage and what that means as family and building and generational wealth and all of that stuff. Now they wanna use the buzzword generational wealth, but they're not gonna do the things to get to it, which includes being married. So I don't. It's the times, it's the climate these days, unfortunately, and I don't think it's gonna get any better because people aren't seeing the benefits of marriage anymore.
I want to get your on this, Shelly, as far as what's the cause of it? Why do you believe we're seeing less people want to get married?
Yeah. I agree with T, and I agree with what's her name, Lala, to a degree. I think fewer people are getting married. I think both sexes don't know or don't have a purpose for their marriage. And I think maybe the people who do get married, maybe many of them come into it with so many different ideas about what they think marriage should be. And then when it doesn't pan out to be that, not mind you that the thoughts are unrealistic from the beginning in many cases. But this wasn't always the case with us, even with Black people, was not always the case. We had some of the highest marriage rates, intact families, way before welfare reform or the welfare society came into play. We had a higher percentage of being married and having intact families. So this was not always the case. I think people are misguided about what marriage is. I think those people who are married, a lot of times marriage is not necessarily like the honeymoon, right? So having a honeymoon, I think it sets up people for this fantasy about what marriage is. And then I'm just saying we collectively, we don't really know how to go through the challenges of marriage when they arise, not if, but when they arise.
Mm-hmm. I want to get you in on this, Kendra, if you could respond to Shelly, because basically the same challenges that our grandparents had and their grandparents had are basically similar, same challenges we're having now. marriage is still man and a woman. Well, it's kind of changing a little bit, but when you talk about traditional marriage, it's still two people coming together, two families coming together, and you have financial, you have children, different things come into it. But for the most part, the struggles or the issues that arise in a marriage are the same issues that would probably arise for our grandparents and our parents and things like that. But they were married. They were getting married. Now we're seeing a decline in marriage. So I want to get your thoughts. What's going on? Why do you believe that there's a decline in marriage now? And no, that's not the question. I wanted to ask you: do you believe it's due to the secularism of the country or of the world that we're getting? Because less people are identifying as religious. Less people are going to church. Marriage, traditionally comes from church and faith-based institutions. Do you think that has something to do with the reason why less people are getting married?
I think that the previous generations did a terrible job of showing us what true marriage is. We always saw the good, the united front, especially if you're in a religion, the matching outfits with the tie and everybody matching it, whole family matching. We saw all of that, but they never really told us how to navigate marriage for real. How to make it look beautiful and put it in this nice little bow and package. But the whole leaving and cleaving and becoming one part, I think that part of it, I think that they did a trash job of explaining that. It was just, oh, you dating when y'all get married, and not, okay, when you get married, this is how you merge two lives, two families. They don't at least I can say that for me, and as someone who is divorced, I think that the other side of it that they don't talk about is it takes all of 15 minutes to get a marriage license. It takes 3,722 years to get a divorce. And because of that, a lot of people, I think, are saying, I can have the relationship. There are ways for me to structure the generational wealth without having to go and have the government to give me this piece of paper. So I think that it is a combination of both. Culturally, things have kind of shifted. I think that the other part of it is people seeing marriage and they seen the bad parts of marriage, and they don't want a chance that they would have to experience that, because again, we always saw what was presented in public as beautiful, but then behind closed doors, it may not have been beautiful. Grandma was married for 72 years, but granddaddy got 42 kids all around the city because he was a hoe. So, like,
let me ask you this. Let me say something, because we hear that narrative, pushed that, back in the day, our grandparents and great grandparents, they married and they stayed together just because, but they were unhappy, But when you think about it, well, I don't know whether that's true or not, but they did build generational wealth. They stayed together for years and years and years, but they built wealth for their families. They built families, they built generations that did much better than them in most situations. So now we have situations where people are getting married. They usually court a lot longer, but the marriages don't last. So I want to take a look at this here. This is a marital status by state starting in 2023. And it shows the top states that have longevity in marriage. And look, so we aren't talking about California, New York City. We're talking about Midwest states. These people are living simple lives. They're outdoors. These are outdoorsy states. These are states that regular folk, what do they call? Heart of America, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, Nebraska. What are they doing here that's keeping their marriages together that Lala is not doing in LA?
I'll tell you what they're doing.
I think that also technology, it's a good thing, it's a blessing and a curse, because we have access to all types of information and people from all over. And that also is a hindrance sometimes to families, because, people have options. You have more options. But the people in, the Midwest
Think they have
they think they have options.
Yeah.
I mean, they do. They have access.
Right, access. I mean, they have access. When you talk about this social media and these online hookups and all this type of stuff, it's really half the time this stuff doesn't really turn into anything. It's just a quick thing. It's not really an actual option. These people are not what you think they are when you see them on social media. They're not, there's no relationship building here. And it just messes up marriages and things like that.
Yeah. The states you show, most of those what we call middle America, what the politicians like to call flyover country, those people have what I like to call real lives, right? They have land, they have their families, they probably don't have a lot, or at least not invested in a lot of the technology like we found on the coastal states, like where we live. So they live in real world. They work, they go to home, whatever they do. They might struggle through things, but they also they just have a broader purpose for their lives, for their family, and they're not necessarily concerned about the glitz and glamour of being and like on a morphine drip 24/7, so constantly happy. That's not reality. Real life means that even in your marriage, there's going to be struggles, there's going to be challenges. You and your spouse may be on opposite pages. Hell, you may be in opposite rooms for a while. Like Kendra was saying, these are some of the things that were not talked about. So maybe the next generation, we didn't do a good job, or we weren't given a good piece of information, the reality of what a marriage is. It doesn't just look good on the honeymoon day, on the wedding day. There's some real grinding sometimes to this thing called marriage.
I also think that, we're our generation and younger than us, we're trophy kids. So we were handed everything. So we didn't know how to work for things. We didn't know how to put in the work for things. So when situations come up in a marriage, we're just like, oh, nah, I ain't gonna do this. I ain't gonna handle this, and I'm out. We give up easily. They didn't give up as much back then. Or even in the Middle East, they're probably like, middle America, they were like, this is our community. This is what we have. Their values a bit more, when it comes to family, their values a bit more stronger than someone who had to work for it.
And that's a question I want to ask you guys, because there was a time, and I said this to Kendra, where, people, their faith, their religion kept them together. So it wasn't even an option of divorce. They believed that once they got married, this was for a lifetime, and they stuck it out. And so these marriages lasted a lot longer. Do you think that was actually a good thing, to have those value systems and beliefs and to keep these marriages together, or you think that wasn't a good thing for the marriage and for people?
I think that. Oh, go ahead, Shelley.
Oh, by and large, yes. Again, because it was a greater purpose. Yes, you wanted to be there and support the couple. But today, I would say, you asked this question about the religion or the church. I would say churches are, part of the problem more than they are part of the solution today in our society, our economy. Many churches, someone wrote it on social media. It's a shame that churches have more funerals than they have weddings nowadays. And a lot of the messages that they are putting out, they're not geared towards couples stay together. Even in a lot of Black churches, you still hear, I think it's still common to hear, don't tell nobody your business. Keep your business to yourself. Well, then that goes back to Kendra's point. How are we supposed to be teaching the next generation what the real reality of marriage is if nobody can know your business? And I'm not saying that you have to publicize everything. I'm not saying that. But to keep everything like this and not reach out when you say, you know what, I may be struggling, or, I need some help. Well, don't tell nobody your business. Well, then what are we going to do?
I 100% agree with that, Shelley. I think that is part of the problem. And I agree that I told my therapist yesterday that there's beauty in being vulnerable in safe spaces. And I think especially when it comes to the Black church is notorious for not being considered safe. Because how many times have you said something to your pastor or the first lady, and then your business be a part of the sermon on Sunday. And you be like, you know what? I didn't tell you that for you to tell the church, pastor. I told you because I came to you in confidence. And I think that that is part of the problem, is that we don't create those safe spaces to have those conversations. Like, you know what? We don't like each other today. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with, addictions and, family, as we get older, our parents are getting older, and we're dealing with transitioning in life and all of those things. And we don't have a playbook. I can say my parents, they just kind of did, they filled in the blanks and just, did what needed to be done. But they never shared the information. They didn't reach back and say, listen, it's going to come a point in time where there's going to be a shift. And I think that we lost when we did that. We're losing, not even lost. We're losing because there used to be a time where you had the married couples, and the married couples would meet and y'all would talk amongst married couples about married couple stuff. But most married couples don't do that because it's not a safe space where we can come together, husband and wife, and say, hey, we struggling, and have that community. And then there's also not a place where, as we are growing and you're transitioning into adulthood and you wanting to be a wife and husband for, the married people are not saying, listen, before you enter into marriage, you got to make sure you're a whole person, because if you a half a person and he a half a person, y'all gonna have a half of a mess. And like there's none of those conversations that are happening. And because of that, now you have a generation of people that's like, you know what? I'm gonna stay single because marriage is crazy and trash. And then you have the people who get married and they can't stay married because they don't know how to exist with another human being. So we have to start having those real life conversations with each other, so that way the generation behind us, they will actually want to believe in marriage, and they want to believe in the sanctity of marriage and family. And we have to go back and bridge the gap in the pieces.
I definitely disagree with that, because I think, like I mentioned earlier about technology, I think that people are having those conversations because we have access to resources and access to everyone's going to therapy and all that stuff these days. So I think we have more people talking now. It's just that, and that's part of the reason, because more people are talking like, marriage ain't what you think it is, so you might want to rethink it. Or, people are saying these things, and that's why people aren't getting married, because it's like, oh, she told me that marriage ain't all what I think it is, so I'm going to hold on.
You have to have a balance. You have to have a balance between the people saying marriage ain't what it needs to be, girl, run, and the people that are saying marriage is hard, but this is how you do the work. You can do hard things. And the problem is that you only have the people that are talking are the ones that are miserable. The ones that are happy and still in marriage, they're holding they're gatekeeping the information. So they ain't telling you like, yeah, it's hard, but it's doable. So we have to drown out the noise of the people that are saying run the other way, and give the people the option. Like, yeah, you might want to run the other way. You might be a person that say, you know what, marriage ain't for me, and that's okay. And then you have the people that are in marriage, they've been married 35, 45, 55, 65 years, and they say, hey, listen, this is what it looks like. My parents will be married 35 years next month, March. And, and they give us the good, bad, ugly, and indifference of marriage. I've had that example all 35 years of my life, but everybody doesn't have that. And so we have to stop gatekeeping the good information. The people that are staying in the fight for all the right reasons, they have to start talking just as much as the people that are saying go run the opposite direction. Because if you don't, then you are going to have the ones that are talking are the ones that are saying run. So
I want to change gears for just a moment, and I want to talk about the women. So, certainly our grandparents, our grandmothers, our aunties, or great aunts are not the women that we see today. They don't carry themselves like our grandparents. They don't look like our grandparents, don't act like our grandparents, don't speak like them. There's a totally different type of woman out here now that is trying to be selected by a man. And so, can we talk about that? And I want to talk about, for instance, what's her name? Kanye's ex-girlfriend, Rose. I forgot her first name.
Amber Rose.
Amber Rose, she came out. She was went viral this week also, right around the same time Lala did, because she came out and said men are gross. She said that she felt like she was going to be alone for the rest of her life, and she was fine with it, or she would be a lesbian. And so, but when you look at the person saying this, Amber Rose, she's known for creating the slut walk. She pushes this narrative that women can sleep with as many men as they want to. She actually put out something this week she put out something on the blog saying, I'll suck the behind of any guy that can get me into the Super Bowl. So we have this culture of lack of modesty, of whoring, women whoring themselves out to anybody. No connection, no relationship with the men, no commitment. Sleep with any and everybody, and not only any and everybody, sleep with your man too. So is that adding to why we're not seeing the marriages like we did in the past?
I don't necessarily think so. Because there were hoes back then too. They just wasn't on social media to talk about it. Because how you think you got 14 brothers and sisters because your granddaddy done got 42 kids up the street and around the corner. So hoes been hoeing for a long time.
I totally
It's just not, they didn't verbalize the hoedom.
This stuff going on now. Yes, there were whores in the years, in our grandparents and parents' time. But the stuff that is going on now, this was not going on. Just the way women present themselves. They come out half naked most of the time. Then this whole idea of, this wasn't in our grandparents where they were telling men that they're going to sleep. It's shameful to say someone is a whore, or shameful to say someone is a slut. And these women clearly coming out saying, I can sleep with as many men as I want. There's no commitment. That wasn't back in our grandparents' day like it is today.
You said the key word there, shame. We don't have the shame that we have in our communities like we did before. And liberalism has afforded everybody the right and the freedoms to do whatever they want. And we've lost the blueprint of how it is to be, how it is to act in society or behave in society, because everybody wants to do whatever they want. And that's where we are now. Everybody is doing, no matter who you are, the alphabet community, women, because women, and another thing, women have been hurt by men being the whores, that they're like, you know what, I'm going to do that too, just so I can have a safe space, or I can guard my heart, guard my whatever. I'm going to do the same thing that y'all men are doing. And that's where they are now.
That's not guarding your heart, though.
That's not what?
That's not how you guard your heart.
But the thing is that KJ, we have a whole generation or two, again, who we were not, I'm saying we collective, we're not taught these things. So there was a vacuum, right? That, again, society abhors a vacuum. It's going to be filled with something. And unfortunately today, many people get their values, their cues from social media and these celebrities. So I understand how they do it, because they're filling it up with something, because something else was not put in that place. So again, this is generational. These are the consequences of not teaching the generations coming forth. These are the consequences. At that, we can lay blame to ourselves and maybe even our parents and grandparents for not trickling down these values. So I'm not blaming these people. I can understand it. However, the thing is that how can we go forth and maybe change the narrative for our children?
That's the question I was just about to ask. How do we move forward?
I agree. I think that for me, I grew up, I had to go to charm school. My great grandmother, when I was like 7, it was called Pretty Me. I spent every Saturday learning etiquette, how to sit with your legs crossed. You had to wear the little socks with the little frilly thingies on it and everything. And I think that when we stop doing that and we stop teaching true femininity and not feminism as the world knows it, but just being pretty and just being, sitting with your legs crossed and those life skills that, I at 35 still use today. I think we stopped doing that. And, it could be a host of reasons we can lay blame for, but I think we lost our sense of community. It used to be a point in time where if I cut up and my mama wasn't around, whatever adult was in the room could gather me. And then they're going to tell my mama, and I'm going to get in trouble again when I get home because now I'm outside and I'm acting like I ain't got no sense. But now we live in a culture where you can't say nothing to my child. Because if you say something now, mom, if I'm go home, I'm gonna tell you now, I can't teach you anything. So the sense of community, we've lost it. And I think the way we have to get back to us being a community and teaching, listen, this is what being a lady looks like. This is what, being, even if it's self-expression and learning how to express yourself, whether it be through fashion and clothing, but not doing it in a way where you're whole naked outside, and, exploring whatever, dating with a purpose, things that, they don't teach now, it's, you don't, there's no playbook for it. And I think we have to get back to a space where we're teaching and we're sowing those seeds, even if they don't come to fruition, at 13, 14, 15, at 23, 24, 25, you start thinking back after life done whooped your tail just a little bit. And you be like, you know what, they might have known what they was talking about. And I think we have to get back to creating those social programs to where we come together as a community to teach those things and not just depend on a TikTok video or a Facebook reel to give the information. Yes, we have to adapt with the times, but we also have to get back to being able to touch the, for the last 3 years, everything is virtual. And I, as somebody who works from home and ain't never going back, I love it. But we also need the sense of community where I can see her, I can hug you. We can sit down and have those face-to-face conversations and those things. And I think we have to get back there.
All right.
Another point is,
what are your thoughts on how can we fix it? What can we do to move this forward and fix this idea of marriage, the institution of marriage?
Yeah. So, I mean, I agree with Kendra when it comes to community. We have to get back to actually, but the thing is, these children are so hard-headed these days, they're even more hard-headed. They're not going to listen. So we got to get them into the position of being an example and a role model and show them that everybody's not doing those things that you think that they're doing. We have to be the example and show them like, this is the way that you can grow and be a different type of person. And I think because we have to start with the children. The adults, they're already gone. But most children, once they see something different, it gives them the option to want to be something different than what they've been seeing. So just being the example ourselves and creating these spaces where they can learn different things or see different things that are better.
All right. What are your thoughts, Shelley, on moving forward and helping to strengthen the institution of marriage?
I would say be honest. Be honest. Again, we talked about, particularly in today's climate, we talked about before in other subjects that we have to start telling our children things earlier than we would normally tell them. Well, I think we have to be honest with them as well. We need to just be upfront, honest. Nothing is going to be 100% glamorous and nothing is going to be necessarily 100% bad. In between there, we can find that we can work through the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever. But we just have to be honest and upfront and transparent. And as far as the safe space stuff, I think it's important that we also have these quote unquote safe space people that we can just talk to and be real with. Again, maybe I'm struggling in this area. What's your take? How can I muddle through this phase, if you will? So I would just say be honest.
Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the show. I agree with everyone. One thing I think of, people are just too shut in. And the advent of social media and now the pandemic has even closed us off even more from family, from friends. It's really I think, a big issue, and it's going to be a big issue going forward to our young people. So I agree with what everyone said. We have to do something, because once the institution of marriage collapses, then goes society, because then goes the family. And then once the family collapses, then goes the community. So it's all connected. It's all connected, and we're seeing the evidence of it. So we'll continue to talk about this. This is the Love Month. February is the Love Month, so we are going to have a theme of relationships every week. So we will continue to talk about this topic. We have a new webpage. You can find us now at popandpoliticslive.com. Again, that's popandpoliticslive.com. You can go there. You'll see some of our new content. You'll see our weekly shows. And so definitely go on and check us out. And you can sign up for our newsletter. So that way we stay connected. As we were saying, we have to stay connected. We do have to, reach out to one another and constantly keep the lines of communication open. And this is a way to do it. So again, you can join the conversation by leaving a comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Again, this brings us to the end of our show. Again, we are a necessary voice in news and entertainment. You can also check us out on our website at www.metroconservativemedia.com. We look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, count your blessings and live a life of purpose. Good night.